All right, so I'm Tashara Carnahan.
I'm Cami Orton.
I'm Lauren Buchan.
And I'm Jessica Vasquez.
Okay, so based on the first video we saw, the advocate against same-sex marriage, the first question was, what principles of effective speaking did you see in his speech?
Well, I like the time limit. I know that's kind of a dumb one, but like, you know how we're reading about like you got to keep it kind of short because if you go on and on and on, people are gonna stop listening. So I think
Right.
that was good. That yeah.
He has.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I guess he had a story in the beginning, but I don't know. I could go on about how I didn't really like it that much.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say the one thing that I thought was really good was that he spoke with clarity. I could understand what he was saying, and he paused for effect.
That's true.
But other than that, like he had a story, but his story was very repetitive, and the time limit was great, but everything that he said in that time limit was the same stuff.
That's
So
a
it
good
really
point.
was like he was going on and on and on and on and on.
I think
Yeah.
the way that he delivered it was great, but the actual words that he was saying
Right.
was not.
Well, it was just, I tuned him out. Like, I really could feel myself being like,
Yeah.
okay, this guy does not know what he's talking about. Like, and even though I am a religious person, like, we are super religious, and yes, that's what we believe, I was tuning him out
Yeah.
really bad. Like, I was like, this is awful.
Well, because I mean, kind of the next question, the basis for what he was saying was religious, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess
like
we can just talk about kind of all of these questions and talking about his speech, but
Yeah, I mean, we can continue going on through all the questions, like, what was the basis for it? Like, let's talk about that right now.
Mhm.
yeah,
I
it
mean,
was
that's
go
saying
ahead.
that the Lord was against same-sex marriage, but he did it in such a hateful way.
Yeah,
It was intimidating.
seriously. Well, and like after listening to the two, my brother and my sister were in the room when I was listening to them, and I kind of said like if it wasn't for like my religious convictions, like I would totally agree with the second guy because like you
Yeah.
said, the first guy was so hateful and like I kind of thought that he was radical and like, oh my gosh, he needs to calm down. He's a little crazy, like
Mhm.
I don't know.
And you could tell, like, the people in the background in both videos,
They
like,
were like leaving, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
no one really cared about the first one, and then the second one, like, people were like, yeah, and cheering, and, like,
yeah,
it's just totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I was like, oh, yep, people don't like him. They're leaving. And then the other guy, they were like, yeah, we
nodding
totally
along. Yeah,
connect with you. And I think that's because the other guy had a personal story. And, I mean, he was a much better speaker on terms of getting people to agree with him.
yeah,
So, but I don't know. The first guy, if I was on the fence, like the question says, if I was on the fence when it came to same-sex marriage, I would probably be for it after that guy's speech. I'd be like, he is rude. Like,
yeah,
really rude. But yeah, I mean, he didn't have any other sources other than a religious standpoint, and so after listening to it, I was like, so what's your credibility on this? And I don't know. And he just wasn't very kind about it either. I don't know if that would have changed my mind if he was more kind.
Yeah, because
yeah,
Yeah.
he was not opened to any other view except,
His
like, no, it's totally wrong. And it's like he was even taught, it felt like he was like, I don't even like them. Not even, do you know what I mean? Like, he can't
Yeah.
there. He doesn't even seem like even though he's talking with the Lord in mind, he's not approaching it in the right way.
Right. Which is sad.
Whereas the second guy, like you mentioned, he had a personal story that was like very effective. That I don't know. That's something you can't argue with when someone says like, "This is how I was raised and I'm doing great. I liked it." You can't like, "Oh no, you didn't," or you know what I mean? Like,
Right. However, when he said, and I turned out fine, well, what is fine? Like, you could think you're fine, but are you really? I mean, like, whenever we say, like, oh, I was raised by these kind of parents and I turned out fine, are we really fine? I mean, sure, to us, we do think that, so I don't know. I don't know if that's credible either, because it's your own opinion if you're fine or
Yeah.
not.
well, and
It was like so bold when he was like, was it Judge or whoever? He's like, I think you would be proud of me too.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, he turned it to the us, the story. He started with me, the story of the self, and then he turned it to the story of us by saying, well, we're like any other Iowa family. We're just like you
yeah,
guys. I mean, I'm a student just like your kids, And then by the end he talked about, the call to action and you guys need to vote for this because I turned out fine and everybody else will too, and you can't treat us like second-class citizens and all of that stuff.
well,
And
yeah,
so
and
he was
he
more
phrased it in a
bold.
way that, like, well, sure, anyone would agree with that. That no matter what you believe, like, you shouldn't be treated as less than a person. Like, no one's
Mhm.
gonna disagree with that. So I think that was another effective thing that he did, is he phrased things in a way that everyone, regardless of whether or not you believe in same-sex marriage, is gonna be like, yeah, that's true, and kind of agree with portions of what he's saying.
Right. And I think part of the reason, like one of the questions that says, if you were on the fence, how would you feel after listening to his speech? And I think that even after listening to his speech, I would still be on the fence because his example was only based on one child, himself, with same-sex
Yeah.
parents. And so he turned out fine based on what he thinks, but it doesn't account for all of the other kids in that situation as
True.
well. We
Like, I
don't know
mean,
how they turned out.
like statistics talk about how it's like risks are higher for children who are raised by single parents or, out of divorce or whatever. But there's lots of people who come from those types of families that do turn out well and great and good, but it's like you can't just base it off of one person.
Yeah,
Just like
like
people who are raised by both families or both parents turn out not so good.
right. I think it depends on the resilience factor. He could have had a really high resiliency-ness, compared to other kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he can't he didn't cite any studies. He only cited his own personal experience. And if that's what we're going to base it off of, all of the people who had great experiences growing up in those situations, of course they're going to be for it. But there are certain people who have come to light now, some adults who have grown up in same-sex accounts, and they're coming forward to the Supreme Court saying, we did not turn out fine. We're really messed up, and we know that this kind of situation is not good for kids to be raised in. So what side do you believe? Do you believe the kids who are saying, oh, it was great, or do you believe the other side where they're like, no, we were in it too, and it's not good? So there has to be more studies, and you have to cite them. You can't just base it off of one or two people's experiences.
Yeah, his whole thing would have been like more persuasive if he added that research aspect to it.
Yeah. But compared to the first one, this one was definitely more persuasive. It still lacked.
Yeah.
It still lacked, though.
Yeah.
What about you, Renati? Renati.
Thanks for getting started. But anyway, I was just thinking that I don't know, I was really persuaded. I mean, I'm not on the fence with same-sex marriage. Obviously, I'm really against it, but I was like, wow, this kid really knows what he's talking about because I felt like he really applied to my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like, obviously, if he had statistics, it would have been a lot stronger, but just like he was very charismatic, his personality, the way he presented at the store, everything, I feel like added up, and I feel like he did a really good job, minus that. So I felt like with that, if I was on the fence, I would have been like, yeah, look, he's a person too, we have to be equal, and So opposed to, like you said, with the first people or the first speaker, I was like, wow, this guy is harsh. He's mean. He's a jerk. I mean, if I wasn't religious, I would have been glad I wasn't religious because, wow, if that's what God thinks, then I don't want to be religious either. So I don't know. I thought it was smart for our teacher to present it that way so we could open our minds to how important it is to have a good persuasive argument is what it made me think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a lot of the problem nowadays where people are saying, I don't want religion, is because of that exact issue, where people are bringing up religion in arguments like this, but they're putting it in a way that reflects badly on not only us, but also God. And that's not how God is. And so that's why, I mean, God has commanded us, in the Doctrine and Covenants, it says, if you do not have the characteristics of hope, charity, faith, love, you cannot teach the gospel. You cannot proclaim that you follow me. And so I think that just proves that God wants us to present him in a way that is truthful, and in order to do that, we have to be kind and loving, not how this guy was portraying him at all, because this was portraying him as cruel and harsh and unloving. And that's not true.
I also noticed, like, between the two, the first one kept, like, referring to his notes, like, a lot, and then the second one was, like, more confident in the material he had gathered.
Yeah, like he memorized it or something.
And that's, sometimes when people are reading, you're like, okay, this person doesn't really know what he's talking about, or, like, more confident in what he's showing, and then the other guy was like, I don't know, they're just so totally different.
Yeah, the other guy, I felt like he kind of just paused for a long time because he like lost his place.
Yeah.
And that was really distracting. But, all right, so what did you guys think about the article by Matt Walsh? Like, what did he do well? What was effective about what he wrote?
Well, to me, he presented both sides rather than like keeping it one-sided. I felt that he like presented two sides in his article, and that's what I saw as a strength for him.
I thought he did a really good job telling stories. So he would tell his readers about him, like, this is the kind of guy I am religious, I have a family, and then he would talk about what was happening in the world. And then by the end he talked about what we needed to do in order to shape the world and the future how we would want it. And so he did present what was going on, where yes, this is how people think who are against same-sex marriage, but this is what people are doing on the other side as well. And so he shared like what the Supreme Court did on Prop 8, and I didn't even know that. I did not know that the Supreme Court just overruled everybody's vote and just kicked it out and said, no, sorry, we're going to allow same-sex marriage. The people don't have a say. And it was all based on because the people weren't being constitutional about it, which I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what that means, because we have the freedom of speech, and so if they were like advocating for Prop 8 and they were like saying like vote for Prop 8, and then people were like, oh no, sorry, you can't. And then, I mean, it wasn't, and California is a big state, and so having a ton of people vote for Prop 8 and then to have the state judge totally overrule it and say no, that's a huge deal, because that's a lot of people in California that voted for it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I agree. I really like that he added those things too, because I'm guessing a lot of people don't know that, but I don't know. I also really like that he kind of, I don't know, he presented it in a way that I felt like wasn't overbearing. He said, oh, well, I know a lot of people think this, but this is what I think. It made me want to read his article more, because at first I wasn't sure what he was talking about. Whereas I think if he would have said, "Oh, this is how it is," I felt like he sounded logic, like he said he was going to, and that it made sense. And then I don't know, I was curious because he said there were going to be comments at the bottom that didn't like it, so I read the comments on the bottom afterward. And there were a lot of people there.
So did I.
I don't know, just ridiculous things like, "Oh, people that are same-sex can all go to an island and they can mate just to have children, but then still
Oh yeah, I
raise
read that.
whatever." And
I read that comment and I just was like, okay, so you're saying they can be in a relationship, but in order to have children, they have to go outside of that relationship to have children, and then go back to their relationship, and it will be all fine and dandy. I mean, it was like, so why do you
That's not
want
working.
marriage then? Why do you want marriage if you're just gonna go do that to have kids? You know, like
what
that's
about
messed up.
the loyalty? I don't know, it just doesn't even make sense. I
I don't know. What did you guys think for like the basis of his stance? Because I felt like it was semi-religious, obviously,
I thought it was too.
without being. I don't know.
It
Like
was
that other
religious
guy.
without being harsh like the first guy. But it was still from a religious point, which is what, at the very end, I thought that he still was kind of opinionated throughout the article, and that bringing in religion was a little bit sketchy instead of, like, studies. And so I thought he did a lot better than the first video, but it was still, I mean, yes, it was persuasive, but we don't want to bring religion into it at all. And so I think that's why a lot of people got mad at his article, because they were just like, well, what about people who aren't religious? I mean, what about them? Can they don't think that this is wrong or bad, or, you know, I mean, anybody could bring up
Yeah.
anything if it's regarded on a religious standpoint, and that's why you want to stay away from it.
That's even what the Martha or Marcia or whoever the lady was like. As bad as it sounds, you can't have religion in like an argument because people are just gonna get at you and not even care what you say pretty much because you're using it.
Yeah, well, because unless you have the same beliefs, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything. It's just
Yeah.
like if they said like, oh, well, my friend said this, like, we're gonna be like, okay, I don't care what your friend said. Like, I don't, you know, I don't know. That's not an authority to me. And so if you're not religious, God isn't an authority to you.
Right. And I think that's what people don't understand. I think people just assume, well, I believe this, and so everybody else should believe it too, especially if it's religious. And so, I mean, that's a problem of bringing religion. Because if it's a study, then that means it's fact. I mean, yes, we know that our religion is true, but not everybody else believes that or knows that. And so, religion to them is just a belief instead of a truth.
True.
Plus, a lot of people that are maybe not a lot. People that are for same-sex marriage, they're not going to be religious. I think more likely.
Well, right, because like the guy said in the first argument, it says in the Bible that it's an abomination. So I don't really know how
Yeah.
you can believe in God in that way, or just be Christian and have same-sex relations. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I have my husband's cousin. Her and her husband. I mean, I don't know if they were Mormon, but they know the Mormon belief, and they are totally they don't believe in that stuff at all, and in like the religion, and they're all for same-sex marriage. So I could see how people could be like, just because you're saying it's religious, it has no impact over it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that was the main point of what we just answered the last second to last question of what was less effective about his article.
Yeah.
But at the very end, did any of you guys have any other questions?
No.
I think not so much questions, but kind of like what we were saying is like I would have liked to see more facts. You know, like
Yeah.
I don't know. Kind of, I guess if I were to talk to him, I would ask, well, what else do you have to back that up?
Yeah, I agree. I think for all of them, that's what I would ask. Just because all of them were very much their own opinion instead of sharing studies and stuff, which is, I think, the reason why she had us summarize at least 4 sources about our threat so that we could back our argument up with sources instead of just saying,
Yeah.
well, my opinion is this, and totally not be persuasive at all.
Mhm.
Did anyone else feel like that assignment was so hard? Or
Oh
no?
my gosh, yes.
Oh yeah, it took me 7 hours.
It took forever. I didn't think it was going to
Yeah.
take that long.
It took me a long time to find the original studies for my threat because a lot of other researchers summarize studies, but they don't actually have their own studies. So it took me a long time to dig so deep to
Yeah.
find the original study, to find the actual number of participants and what the study entailed and everything. I mean, it took so long to find it, and it was hard. It was really hard. But yeah, so I'll just quickly summarize what we went over, and then you guys can add or change anything at the end. So the first video that we saw, we summarized it as he spoke with clarity and he paused at specific moments for certain times, and it was sometimes good, sometimes not so good. The basis of his stance, though, was a religious point, and he didn't have any studies to back it up, which made it really hard to tune in. He kind of had a harsh tone, and so it wasn't very kind, and then we all felt like he was rude and mean and that he didn't have anything else to back it up other than a religious standpoint, which is not very persuasive or effective if you're trying to convince a panel of judges to oppose it. And then for the second video, we thought that he did a really good job of talking about himself. Like, he explained a story of self, then he explained a story of us, of how we're all like any other family, and then he talked about at the end how we need to help protect those who are treated like second-class citizens. So he was very much more persuasive because he was charismatic in his speaking. However, he still didn't back up his speech with sources, and he was going off of the fact that he turned out fine, instead of actually finding sources where multiple kids in that same situation have turned out fine. It was definitely more persuasive than the first speech, though. And then the article by Matt Walsh, we thought that he did a good job of telling stories, kind of getting his readers to know who he is. But again, his basis was religious. His stance was religious based, and that even though he was kinder than the first video that we watched, he still had only a couple of examples instead of real actual sources and studies. He just gave examples of what has been happening in our world, like with Prop 8, and so it was convincing that way, but it still didn't show the reason why we needed to oppose it. So that was the summary, and the questions that we would have aren't really directed on what we didn't understand, but it was more on what we wanted to know, like what kind of sources could have been put in each one of these videos and articles. Is there anything else?
I think that was it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for meeting, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right.
Bye.